Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's 1-hour session on using ACI 318 Plus as a teaching tool. Just want to briefly introduce myself. I'm Stacy McCann. I am a member of ACI staff, and I will be helping to moderate today's session. And with that, we have put together the following 4 learning objectives. We have 2 presenters for you today. The first presenter, many of you may already know. He is Michael L. Tholen, Ph.D., PE. Mike is the Managing Director of Engineering and Professional Development here at ACI.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everybody, for coming to our session this morning to talk about one of our newest products, and that's the ACI 318 Plus. And this session is going to concentrate on how you can use that as a teaching tool in your classroom. So I'm going to start off giving you a little bit of the background and a little demo of the product, and then Trey is going to take you into kind of how you might want to use it into your classroom. I think we're only planning to take up maybe a little over half the time that we have allotted with the presentations, and then we'd really like to get your feedback, your ideas. We're still developing this product, so if there are things that would help you use this in the classroom or you think would be helpful for your students, then we'd really like to hear about those so we can consider them with the other modifications that we're making to the product. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about why we started developing this product in the first place. So as you all know, ACI, through the hard work of its volunteers, has lots of concrete knowledge. We have that collection of ACI committee documents that takes up probably about 18 inches now on your shelf, very dense, 8.5 by 11 material, full of text. We have all the symposium publications. I think we're up to about our 350th symposium publications. We got periodicals, journals going back to 1904. And just like the session you're watching now, we've also been able to capture over the last several years lots of non-print, lots of video presentations that also add to that concrete knowledge. And that's great because you can, if you have a question about concrete, you can usually find the answer in an ACI resource. That does bring up some issues, though, because when you get outside of sort of the inner circles of ACI and the people that are very familiar with what we produce, that's a lot of information to have to sort through to try to find an answer to an issue that you're having, or to find more information on a particular topic. A lot of people just don't know where to turn. Another thing we need to think about is that, ACI 318, that document is our most well-known product. It's head and shoulders above other documents in terms of sales, revenue. If you plot sales of various ACI documents, you have to take 318 off the chart, or you can't read what all the other documents are doing. It's definitely our most popular product. But it's also very terse, mandatory language. It's code language. It's the rules. It's not there to teach you about a topic. It covers lots of topics covered in other areas of ACI, but apart from that commentary section, which tends to be more background for the provision and not necessarily teaching you about a topic, there's really it's just plain rules, no explanatory text or anything like that. So our thought was, how do we get people using our most popular product to realize that there's more beyond that product at ACI, and to get them to some good information very quickly, right? Designers, just like everybody else, are pressed for time. Schedules get shorter. How do we do that quickly and easily for the people using 318? So basically, what the idea we've come up with is this ACI Plus platform, and 318 is the first document we put into that platform. So you can think of it kind of like we're using our most popular product, ACI 318, as a hub to introduce people to all of our other sources of information. So if we have a topic that comes up in one of the provisions in 318, say that's something about fly ash, well, 318 doesn't explain what fly ash is and how to use it and why it's good and where it's not good, all of that kind of stuff. But we've got a whole committee document on fly ash. So let's link people into that committee document. Or perhaps a committee document is too deep for a first dive into learning about fly ash? What if we have a CI article that's a little more user-friendly, or an educational document that's meant to be a little more introductory? Let's get people different types of resources that they can look at. So that's kind of the basic idea of the product that we've developed. Go over a few of the features here before we get into the demo. First of all, it's web-based. That does a lot of things for us. We launched 318 Plus on March 1st, but it's not done. In fact, it won't be done and probably until we release 318 Plus for 318.25, because ACI continues to develop more knowledge. We have more sessions, we have more journals coming out, committees continue to produce documents. We're going to update the links that we provide in 318 Plus as that new information comes out. So that's one of the main benefits. Of course, it's readily available all around the world as well, is one of the features that helps us. And that's all geared towards making those connections very quickly and very easily to information that will help you learn about concrete or implement a design provision. It has a user notes function. And to be honest, when we were putting together kind of the idea for this product, it was, at least in my mind, it was kind of like, yeah, we should probably be able to jot down notes in the margin type of thing. And I really didn't think that it was a make or break type of situation. But I think as Trey goes into how we've developed the notes function in this product, you're really going to see how it could turn into one of the most powerful features of the product we've developed. Of course, it's electronic, so we want some really good search functions. We've done some nice things there. Something that your students might be interested in are some of the 3D graphics that have come out of our generating color images for 318. And then there's obviously more features that I just really don't have the time to go into here. So getting into this, to get into the publication, you go to any of the ACI web pages. Under the Publications tab, click on 318 Plus. It brings up the splash screen. You'll notice that there are 4 documents listed there. The first one is the code. Another one is our detailing manual that we've just revised, and the reinforced concrete handbook that we've recently published. And both of those documents come along when you get access to ACI 318 Plus. So they're integrated into the product very, very heavily. When you pull the document or the product up, looks kind of like you'd expect. In the center is a representation of the code. On the left is our navigation and search functions. There's a lot of white space over here on the right now, but that's because I have the notes turned on. When I go over the notes feature a little later, that space will be taken up by those. Navigation, I think, is pretty intuitive. On the side, you have folders that you can expand and collapse. You click on any provision, like if I'm doing a beam, I'll click on Chapter 9. Then the document will automatically jump right to Chapter 9. Search function, one of the unique things we've done is we have sort of a contextual search results. So when I search for a particular word or phrase, it will not only give me the provision that it's in, but also the first 10 or 12 words in that provision. And that really helps me narrow down that search to what I'm really looking for. That's kind of a theme that you'll see throughout this product, is we're trying to get people to that information as quickly as we can, not a lot of text or anything like that. One of the things you may have noticed that's not in the current version of 318 are these, we call them icons, that appear under a lot of the provisions. And so the rest of my talk is going to really concentrate on how those work and what they do. Over there on the right, you can see you can also scroll just like any website. So those icons that you see represent different types of resources that we put into, that we've linked into that provision. Okay, so videos have the familiar play button for a video. That's their icon. All of the references that are in 318 are listed under a 318 icon. And this just gives you a visual clue that there's a type of resource linked to that provision. So if you really like to watch videos of people explaining things to you, then you're going to want to keep your eye out for the video icon and see if that's in any of the provisions that you're working on. So I'm going to go over the two of the most popular ones that occur in 318 plus, the terminology and the 318 references. The terminology icon, you can see there's an example right here. If I click on that icon, that brings up all of the terms and the notation that are defined in that provision or the commentary to that provision. So we have an automatic function that searches through the text and brings you up the definition. So if you're going along reading and you can't remember if C sub B was bottom cover to the bottom of the bar to the center of the bar, you can easily click on that icon, get the units to plug into an equation, all that good stuff. The 318 references icon, that's this icon right here. You'll also notice that we have some text that's hyperlinked in this one, and it also includes the 318 icon. When I hover over that text, this dialog pops up and it tells me what bucket, what icon this link falls under. This is a 318 reference. That's all of the references that the 318 committee actually put into the code or the commentary. It gives me the reference call out, and then there's a short note about the whatever the resource is. So, for example, if I'm taking you to a 100-page committee document, well, maybe not all the committee document applies to what I'm trying to point out to you here. So I might tell you that go to section 3.2 of that document and then give you the page numbers. In this case, and it's usually the case for shorter documents, this one's only 32 pages, would just take you to the entire document. So if I actually click on the link instead of hovering over it, it brings up that journal paper for me, assuming that I have access to that on the ACI website. And we'll go into access in just a little bit. I can do the same thing really by hovering over this 318 icon. Here it tells me I have one link, one 318 reference link in this provision. And if I click on the icon itself, that same note that pops up when I hover over it appears again. And I can also click on that link text to bring up the article just like I did earlier. Another thing you'll be interested in, be very handy for your students, is our design handbook. That's the icon you see here. There's an example in chapter 9. At the beginning of chapter 9, we let you know by clicking on the MNL 17 design handbook icon. We tell you that chapter 7 of the design manual covers beams, and then it gives you a list of all the example problems. So you can click on either the main provision or note up here, and that will take you to the beginning of chapter 7 of that manual, or you can click on the individual examples, and it will actually take you to the start of that individual example. That's one of the advantages of having this in the MNL 17 or in the platform, is that we can take you to specific locations in a provision. So when I click on that, here I just clicked on the main one, it pulls it up in a new window. Similarly, throughout the code, especially the member chapters, here we're calculating the nominal shear capacity. We've hyperlinked that text. That link will also show up under the MNL 17 icon. But in this case, we're telling you in chapter 7, example 1, step 6, we actually show an example of applying these shear strength provisions of code section 953 to a T-beam design. So again, we're trying to get you as deep down into the information as we can, as quickly as we can. And then of course, I can take you right into step 6 if you click on that link. Another thing is our 3D graphics. So we have color graphics in the code. If you see the figure caption hyperlinked, you can click on it. It will bring up a 3D image of that detail. And then if you it's a 3D image that you can then rotate, use your mouse to rotate, zoom in, zoom back out, and really get into that detail and see how that reinforcing steel is put together inside there. It's a good way to show your students that they have to think about how all of this material will fit into the beam that they're designing and how the joints work. all of the different types of links. Again, each of them have a little bit of nuance, so I'd encourage you to go ahead and play with it and see how those work. To get access, first you would have to be a member of the faculty network. Well, you don't have to, but it's very beneficial for you to join the faculty network, log in and go to our store, then search ACI 318 Plus faculty. And if you do that, this item, I believe, will be the only one that shows up, and that's the one you want to look for, is with that faculty network tag, because that one's going to be free. Okay, we're giving all of the faculty network members access to the annual subscription of this product, so they can check it out. You purchase at no cost. This isn't the 3 free months of HBO version of free. You don't put in your credit card information and we'll automatically renew your subscription or anything. But you do need to go back each year and sign up again for that free subscription. So you will receive a renewal notice. Now, your students can join ACI as a student member and then purchase 318-19, the student version. That's $99. And then each person that purchases that will be able to log in, go to the store, again, search for 318 Plus, and our system will recognize that you purchased a copy of 318-19 and will give you that 1-year annual subscription. So your students won't be paying any more than they would just buying the code for the course. That'll activate their 1-year free subscription. As far as the resources, many of the resources we have linked in there are free to everyone. When your students become a member or you become a member, you'll also get access to a lot more resources. And then the ones you see, the standards and the educational publications, there are some differences in there, but most of the time they'll require a separate purchase. The user notes are Trey is going to go into there, and I'm running a little bit long here, so I'm going to let him talk about that quite a bit. But one of the things that really sets those apart is that they are shareable. So you'll be able to create a set of notes and then share them with your students. And I'll just go over the tools here. You can see on the left there are a couple of buttons you can click. The Manage Notes allows you to create a new set or share those notes. Just a quick example. I know Trey's going to go into this a lot more. This is chapter 17. And in chapter 17 for anchor design, I need some information from the product manufacturers. So I've hyperlinked to their catalog out on the web and made a little note to myself that the information I need is on page 102, and I save that and it shows up right next to the provision. Some of the things that we're going to do in the future, of course, we want to get more documents on this platform and get those linked in as well. We're working on some functions, and that's what we'd like some feedback today is like corporate sets of notes or educator sets of notes. Or there are things that we can do that would make that easier for you to do that. Some addition comparisons, changes to the code. We will be adding, or we're planning to add, some case studies. I don't know if many of you were familiar with those back when we had the Concrete Knowledge Center, but some actual design examples, and takes you all the way through the drawings for your students to look at. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Trey.
Trey is Professor Emeritus at University of Florida, and Trey is currently an engineer here at ACI.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. All right, well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here talking about 318 Plus. This is actually an exciting addition to the document 318, I think, that has some interesting potential for use as a teaching tool. I know that I've spent 25 years teaching reinforced concrete, and it was always a challenge to incorporate the code in the classroom, particularly for a basic course. It's dry, it's boring, it's not a guide, and so it's difficult for the students to relate to, and it's difficult for the professor to help them to relate to that. So I think this is a big step in the right direction. I think partly the notes itself in the 318 Plus, but also in combination with the reorganization that occurred in 14, it's become much more accessible to the beginner, I guess. let's get started. First, I think we'll have to have a premise here to my talk, and that is that you buy into the idea that you should or would include 318 into your classroom, or adopt or include or somehow present that to your students. ACI provides that that ability to the professor and the students by offering the free student membership plus the reduced rate for the code itself of $99. I know in my classroom, I pretty much first day of class, everybody signed up for 318 student memberships and purchased 318 right there on the spot. They all brought their laptops. That has been so much easier than me collecting money and sending it to ACI. I used to do that. Some of you may remember having to do that in the past. So if you have the intestinal fortitude to try to incorporate 318 into the classroom, that's great. If not, you may want to consider it. Hopefully that this talk will help you with that. One of the reasons to include it in the classroom is that the students, particularly in civil engineering, it's important for them to understand the interpretation of legal technical language. And 318 provides that ability to at least broach that topic for all the students if this course is required for your basic bachelor's degree. It's also a way to kind of make their, I guess, fictitious or flat 2D world of strength of materials and statics a little bit more real world. And by real world, I mean beyond just the physical world. I mean, this is a code for concrete, and it talks about strength of materials and statics. And that, is an important topic, and one that many of us begin our discussion of reinforced concrete with. So Mike presented all of the member resources that are available. Most of these are available to the student member, and that would be available to them if they've purchased the code, downloaded the 318 Plus, and clicked these links. They would be able to get to a lot of these resources. A lot of these would be excellent resources for them in advanced classes and advanced topic, but I think also in basic classes. I'm the most excited about the terminology. Half of the battle is learning the lingo of a new topic, and having the students make sure they understand the notation and the terminology is very important. I'm not going to spend much more time on this because Mike's already covered it, and we don't have a lot of time. We really would like to hear your feedback. So I've put together some examples of how I might use the notes section of 318 Plus. As Mike mentioned, it was almost sort of an afterthought as they were putting together the platform here. But I think it's kind of exciting. It allows you to customize your presentation of the material, which certainly isn't allowed by 318. But in allowing it to customize it, it really allows you to connect what you're talking about, what's out there that talks about reinforced concrete directly to the code and also to the commentary. So along those lines, I put together just a few examples here, just walking you through how you might make use of these notes in teaching. So if you're like me, I start my basic reinforced concrete class with a singly reinforced concrete beam. And I'm going to kind of follow that motif through these examples. This first example, I'm going to be illustrating the margin notes. So you're seeing that over on the side here, and we'll dig into that a little bit, and the things that you can do with those within the 318 Plus platform. So Mike showed you the platform itself. So let's kind of walk through that here to get us started. You'll notice on the right side of the screen, you see the note set blank here, and I've just created this for this talk. That's the other exciting thing, is that you can create multiple note sets that have perhaps different purposes. One thought I had as I was kind of putting this together is, gee, it would be nice to have a quiz note set that I could put in here, kind of a low stakes quiz that that are treasure hunt that the students can kind of look through and interpret code provisions and answer questions that are posed to them over here in the note set side. So the instructor can create these notes and then share them with the students, and can do that in an incremental fashion or a timed fashion throughout the semester. This is not a static thing. It's something that can be created and posted, and then created and posted again, and so forth. So you might see kind of evolving sets of notes even throughout the semester of a single course. So anyway, back to our example. So 318.14 reorganized the code into a member-based format rather than a behavior-based format. And so for teaching kind of your basic fundamentals in reinforced concrete, this doesn't really matter a whole lot. And in fact, the older code covered flexure and shear. And so it was almost a little bit easier to teach that way, because you'd go to the flexure chapter and you talk about flexure, and you go to the shear chapter and talk about shear. This is a little bit more user-friendly for a designer, and ultimately, I think for the student, when you get into talking about design, which really means there's a lot of boxes to check when you're doing a beam design, beyond just flexure and shear fundamental behavior. And that's what the reorganization did for us. It provided that ability to have the checklist for a particular member element in a single chapter, such as beams. So let's dive into this chapter and look at our example here. Each member chapter is divided into a fairly parallel list of items that need to be checked. And you have the front matter, the scope, and the general. You have the kind of design limits. So what about what's a minimum depth of beam that's required, so you don't have to check deflections. Then you have required strength, M sub U, and design strength, VMN. And then all of the reinforcement stuff that you have to deal with that was spread throughout the code before is all checked here. It's not necessarily included here, but it is checked here. So for our example, I'm going to start with, let's go to required strength. I like to start with that because that really brings statics into the picture with the students as they're coming into the class kind of early on. So the code terms it required strength or factored moment, and you have to go to chapter 5. So as I promised, not everything's included in chapter 9. So we can walk over to chapter 5. Already, you're probably seeing, and I hope you are, that just sitting there with the students and walking through your code is a valuable lesson for them. Showing them or pointing them along the way, having them read sections out loud. I've done this in my classes with the hard copy of the code, and it's even easier at this point to kind of electronically walk through. So you kind of make a joke about it. All right, well, we're in chapter 9 beams, but we have to go to chapter 5 to figure out what the required strength is. So we click on chapter 5, and the code takes us up to chapter 5. And then within chapter 5, we find those elusive load factors and load combinations that we're all familiar with. The students perhaps have seen these in their textbook or perhaps in your notes. And you'll see off to the side here, then I've got a note set that has a little plus sign next to it, meaning that there's text hidden there. Now, if I was to create a set of notes here, it might be a good place to do that if I was calculating the required strength. So I'd click on the green button there, and I get this pop-up WYSIWYG. So what you see is what you get editor. Those of you familiar with Canvas and other learning management systems, they typically have an HTML editor here. So this editor allows the rich text hyperlinks, images, and it also has an equation editor in it as well. So you can include equations then directly in the user notes here. So you see on the right there in my user added notes, I've got a couple of equations there with the calculation of the uniform load and then the factored moment based on my load combination. So I have the calculation here that relates directly to the load factors and load combinations and commentary that I want the students to kind of understand. So really that required me to input text, as you see here in the margin notes. And that, of course, could just be copy pasted or created on the fly, however you wanted to do that. The equations, currently the editor is using KTeX, so that puts you out to an equation typesetter. And some of you who have used LaTeX to typeset textbooks or books, this might sound familiar. So it's this really cryptic syntax you see in the lower left here that then creates a very nice looking equation editor. So I have no idea how to use KTeX or anything else, but I did go out to the web and found some translation tools that allowed me to translate a word equation into the KTeX editor there. So there may be more work on that we do depending on the interest there, but that is possible to include that directly. So let's move on to the next example. So probably the most powerful is just the external links that you can create. And this can go to a lot of different things. I'm sure you guys are probably already thinking about how we might do that. So let's go back to our beam example and let's figure out how we calculate the design strength. So we would click on, go back to our chapter 9, click on the design strength, and that takes us then to section 9511 and the design equation that we're all familiar with from LRFD. The strength's got to be greater than the factored loads or the factored effects. So there's, a lot of good discussion that can be had here. But we've already determined the factored moment for this back in chapter 5. So let's figure out how we get to the other side of the equation and deal with that. Well, I just moved down the code to 9521 here. And for an element that has very little axial load, then the code once again sends me to a different place. So we term these chapters towards the end of the code as the kind of affectionately as the toolbox chapters, because that's where we tucked all of the flexure and shear stuff that used to occupy its own chapter and really was broadly applicable to most of the code. So you would get to chapter 22 from beams, you can get there from one-way slabs, you can get there from columns. Chapter 22 is basically the typical sectional strength, that nominal strength that you calculate. And you can see they're very clearly listed here. So we have flexural strength in one section, axial. So we get interaction diagrams here in section 22.4, and so on, all the way down to shear friction. So the member chapters then, and as they relate to the particular behavior that they're looking for, then send you to chapter 22 to calculate that. So when back on my example here, I'd like to first start with, and that's my personal preference, what are the design assumptions? What did you learn in mechanics of materials? How does that relate to what you're doing here? And what does the code tell you about design assumptions? So I go to chapter 22 or section 22.2.1. That actually is the assumptions here right at the beginning of the chapter. So that kind of trickles through or follows through with the rest of this particular chapter. And we start right off with equilibrium and strain compatibility. So now we're starting to see some things that maybe the students recognize from mechanics of materials. You'll see that I've added a note off to the right here and indicated to the students, hey, we've got some assumptions here that we use to determine the moment and the axial strength of the section. So what I want you to do is look through this section here and write down the subsections in the blanks shown on the attached strain and equilibrium diagram in this file. So here's our hyperlink here. So what I have here is a figure that I've created from just sketched myself, and I've placed that in Dropbox, and I've included a link to that Dropbox figure, and that pops up when they click on that hyperlink there. So now I have a little exercise for them to do. This could be done in groups. This is kind of in the skeleton notes format. Those of you who were listening to the best practices and lessons sessions earlier in the week, saw a discussion of this. That was a great set of ideas presented there. So we got skeleton notes here that you can use to connect the dots between the stuff that they learned or should have learned in mechanics and materials back to the 318 code itself. The code language actually addresses this. So that kind of tends to make it real. You know, where does ignoring concrete intention go here? What about that rectangular shaped stress block? What does that mean? So good opportunity for kind of discussion and understanding to occur here. So hopefully that just kind of gets your juices going a little bit about the kinds of things that can be included here as links. These are all external links. So you would have a hypertext there within your within the note set box that could be sent out to perhaps integrated somewhat into your learning management system. So if you have actually flipped your classrooms and you've got videos of yourself talking about this, the hyperlink could send the students out to those particular videos, or if you've got them posted on YouTube, that's, you know, also an option. If you have your own examples that you have posted, then so this connects those examples with these particular provisions, as opposed to seeing an example and then seeing a code provision number next to it. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. And you know the students aren't going and looking at that. They're just trying to get their homework done. So you have to kind of lead them by the nose to the code there and say, hey, this is where it says that. Do you believe it? So photos, websites, ASTM standards. University of Florida has Compass access to the ASTM standards. This would be exciting. What's A615? Let's go look at that ASTM and find out, is it really elastic plastic? And what does that mean? So again, lots of opportunities to kind of connect the dots there. Yet another example, we can actually provide, or the platform can provide the ability, it's a little bit difficult currently, but it can be done, to embed images within the note set to the right then. So moving on down to a topic that's difficult, it has been for me in relating to students, and that's reinforcement limits and reinforcement detailing. And that's, you know, chapters 9.7 and 9.6 and 9.7. So let's take an example of, I want to talk about development link, for instance. So once again, we have this toolbox chapter 25, that chapter 9 sends us out to, right? So we're in the detailing section here, and it tells us if you want to learn the development link, then you need to get out to that spot. You click on that and boom, you end up out in the development link provisions. And so you're looking at kind of full screen here, a piece of the development length. Those of you familiar with the equation, there are some modification factors that modify the development length to be either longer or shorter, mostly longer here. And what I've done is I've added images to the right that actually appear in the platform. So you have to do a direct link to outside images here, but these are my own. And those can be included right there with the table to provide explanation or backup to that, you know, provision. So for instance, epoxy coating, what does that look like? Why do I even care about that? What difference does it make? Why is it a longer development length? What are these psi factors? So having images there and a little bit of narrative helps with that. Casting position, that's another one that's kind of, you can do your hand waving there, but that's a tough one to kind of illustrate with words. So I'm a little bit behind schedule here. We've got about 20 minutes left. I'm going to kind of flip through this fairly quickly, mostly because Mike already talked about this. But another thing I'm excited about is having the direct connection to the design handbook within 318. So this is not really a user incorporated thing. This is something that's already there. Mike's already given you a little bit of detail on that. But if I'm talking about, you know, for instance, this is kind of one of the topics that I find difficult to teach. Let's say I'm designing a continuous beam and I need to detail that. So I'm in 9.7 and it's non-pre-stress and it's flexural reinforcement that I'm detailing. If you look at the commentary there, they give a nice figure. This is repeated in a lot of textbooks, and you probably have used it. A little bit more advanced topic, perhaps some hand waving to those in earlier classes. But it's a mess here. You look at this and it just confuses the heck out of the students. So one way to help with that is to actually go to an example, and that can be accessed either with the pencil and the ruler here or clicking directly on the link developed here. And that sends us out to the MNL 17, the design handbook, and directly to step 7 within one of the examples in the design manual. You can then, you're not stuck there. In other words, they don't throw you into step 7 and then you're stuck there. So you can scroll back up to the top of this example if you need context, or if you need to see more information about this particular example. But that's, the sky's the limit kind of there, and we're looking for input on that and what kind of flexibility might be needed there. So quick recap. The things I've covered here: instructor provided information and resources. That's really kind of the focus on what I talked about today. In addition to, on top of the design handbook, also one thing I did not talk about was SB 66, which is the detailing manual. I don't really have time to include that here, but that's a great place to go look at drawings and sketches of reinforcement when you start talking about detailing, which again is a little bit more of an advanced topic. On top of all of the member knowledge base that you get as a member that is connected to this resource. So just a little plug here for the 21 Professors Workshop as we bring this talk to a close. I'd love to see you there. This is going to be 3 half days. We're fully online again just because of the uncertainty as we're going forward here. We had a great session last year. We have lots of great professors that do an excellent job of teaching, and they're going to be sharing their wares here to help you with the resources and the teaching that you might need for reinforced concrete and materials. So with that, I'll close, and thank you very much for your attention.
All right, great. Thank you, Trey. Now, if you and Mike are both ready, we do have some questions here that we'll go through, and then we'll see how much time we have left and if we can answer a few more. One of the questions was, is it possible for a student to get access for more than 1 year? Sometimes students buy their code as juniors and then take advanced concrete courses in the senior years, and in their graduate program years would be where it would be great for instructors and students to continue to have access to these tools while they are still students.
So we don't currently have anything like that set up. We've kind of got a year to figure out how or if we're going to deal with that. Sorry, I don't have an answer for that question right now. And one thing I wanted to clear up, just in case people aren't watching in the chat, was that it's actually anybody who buys either a PDF copy or a hard copy of ACI 318-19 or has purchased or purchases in the future will get a free 1-year subscription to this product. So your students do get whatever version they purchase plus access to 318 plus. It's not one or the other. I used to be a designer. I'm probably getting to the point where I'd be considered a little old school now, but I always flip through my code left and right all the time. So I would find it hard to do it just online, but I know that getting to resources is much easier online. Plus, a lot of professors tell us that, students might prefer to buy a PDF, but I don't want them to have computer access while they're taking an exam, for example. So having them buy the hard copy first, something that they can take and use in their career, just seemed to work best for us. And that's also true for just regular members. If you purchased a copy of 318-19 2 years ago, when it first came out, we have a record of that. If you purchased it from ACI anyway, and that free 1 year of membership will show up when you go to attempt to purchase the 318 Plus subscription. So I just wanted to clear that up in case people didn't see that in the chat.
All right, next question we have here. Somebody asked, just curious, is it allowed to include, are we allowed to include screenshots of code sections in class lectures, for example, in PowerPoint slides?
Yeah, that's fine. We have, in fact, what you're actually looking at when you're looking at 318 Plus is images of the text, not actual text. So if you were to go in and try and highlight it, it doesn't copy and paste very well. But I believe you can go in and right click on it and save individual photos of or images of the provisions themselves. So hopefully that's helpful.
Stacy, before you take the next one, let me just, hopefully folks are stay tuned in for the whole session, but if you do leave and you have some thoughts or ideas about what we can do or features that you might like to see, please chat those. Don't get away without letting us know. We're going to capture the chat and certainly consider the possibilities there. So anyway, just wanted to plug that in there.
Yeah, definitely. Next question is, will ACI 318 Plus be available in SI units?
Yeah, that's our plan. I don't know exactly when we will get to that. We're still debating on what priority to put on different things, but eventually our hope is that all of the ACI documents are on this platform and we're able to link them all together. So it would just be a matter of kind of flipping the switch to get the SI unit version up. Of course, most of our resources are actually in dual units. So there might not be a whole lot of change when you go from one set of units to the other as far as the resources themselves, but we would like to get an SI unit version of the code linked up with all the resources that the inch-bound version is linked up with.
Okay, perfect. The next question was, is there a special price for young professional members?
Not for young professional. There's no different price for young professional members. It's the same price. Again, if a young professional goes out and buys a copy of the code, they do get that first year for free. I believe it's right around $150 a year or for a member, and I think around $250, $260 a year for a non-member to purchase an annual subscription. But you have to remember that includes not only 318 and the 318 Plus resources, but the detailing manual and the design handbook as well. So you're actually sort of buying access to 3 documents there.
All right. Next question, can instructors share their notes with other instructors?
Yeah, the note sharing happens. You email people, and then in the system it will send them, and they'll have to accept the notes. So you can share your notes with anyone that you would like to. I don't believe there are any restrictions. Do you remember any restrictions on who you can share with and who you can't, Trey?
No, I don't think there are. So,
okay.
Yeah. We currently have the limit of 10 note sets, right?
Yeah, so I as an individual couldn't create more than 10. So that's actually one of the things we were hoping to get some feedback on from the attendees was, do you think that would be enough, or would there be more? Would you set this up for your classroom in modules, and would you need more than 10 modules of notes? Would that be of any advantage to you? So that's something that we can obviously change. It's just a limit to keep the storage space from getting too out of hand for us.
All right, next question here is, can we highlight sections or some categorization and get provisions sorted by highlighted colors?
No, I don't. No, there is no function like that in there currently. I guess I'm having a little trouble understanding what the application would be there. So maybe if I understood that better, you feel free to email me about it. My email is mike.tholen@concrete.org if you don't have time to chat it in right now.
Next question is, will content migrate to 318.25 so they don't have to start over on the platform?
The 318.25 is there will be a lot of decisions made on that one in between now and then. We need to come up with a good way to show the transition. Hopefully you will be able to, I believe the decision we've initially come to was that we would have you accept to transition your notes over. If the provision numbers change in 318.25, then you may have to do some adjusting of where that note occurs. I'm not sure that we would be able to do that exactly for you because we don't know what provision, what content you were putting into your note. So if part of a provision goes one way and part of a provision goes another way, we wouldn't really have any way to do that automatically for you, but we do plan to be able to, to carry forward those notes if that's something that you want to do.
All right, next question. Since ACI has an official Spanish version of 318, will there be a Spanish version of ACI 318 Plus?
Certainly, we hope there will eventually. Like I said, we're in the process of, we just got this one finished up and we're in the process of determining where our priorities should be for going next.
Next question, can you turn on and off the 10 sets of notes such that in the first course, you might have one set of notes visible in the second course and have 2 sets of notes visible? Kind of, do you have an option to turn off what notes are viewed and what notes are not viewed?
Yeah,
He's actually probably more familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do one note set at a time. So you have a listing under the search bar that gives you the choices of notes that you have access to, so you can check the one that you want to look at. So an instructor could send out 3 or 4 note set and say, okay, this week we're going to look at note set 1. This is note set week 1, and then note set week 2. So you could increment your way through with those note sets. You could leave them with the students. The downside I see is the limit of 10. I'm hoping we can do something about that, but yeah, right now you can basically select which notes that are visible.
All right. One of the last questions we had, if somebody purchases the full ACI online collection, can they get a free trial to ACI 318 Plus?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't think currently we have that programmed into the bookstore, but that's something we could consider. I don't think you do right now, but okay. You would want to check back in the future, or I'm sure we'll send out emails to our subscribers to the collection if we decide to do that.
Hey, Stacy, I've got three or four questions I wanted to ask the group, and maybe they could chat their answers.
Definitely.
So thank you all for attending. We appreciate the feedback. I don't know, Mike, if there's one, we might want to think about creating a frequently asked questions on the Plus spot on the website, right? So there's a lot of good, really good questions here, things that people would want to know. So sort of what I personally was hoping to find out from the group here is, does this look useful to you? I've seen a couple of positive comments here. The features that you would think most least useful those are nice. And ideas for features that we didn't talk about or perhaps glossed over, things that you think might be useful, you can chat those, or if you want to send a note to Mike or I, to let us know. That would be fantastic. So yeah, it's I think personally, I think this is a great tool and has lots of options for kind of personalization, which I think is always an issue with professors. I know personally, I had to make my lectures my own in order to be effective and be enthusiastic about it. And this gives you the ability to do that, but still connect with 318. So I think it's a great, useful tool. So, but anyway, love to hear your feedback on that. I don't know if you want to do any other questions, Stacy. Well, we got
Trey,
we're at 11 now. So
Trey, I don't know if you've seen in the chat here, a couple people have said Trey developed a companion set of base notes with examples. Are they for sale?
we'll talk offline.
And another comment says it seems that ACI staff parentheses Trey has created a useful set of notes already that would be great to give access to those notes via the faculty network as a starting point. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So we are right at the 60-minute mark. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. And as both Trey and Mike mentioned, if you have any questions or comments regarding the ACI 318 Plus platform, please feel free to reach out to ACI staff. We are always here to help. And I hope that everybody enjoys the rest of their ACI virtual convention. Thank you so much.
Thank you.